Now, Hulk Hogan, man, I heard you been stealing. It say the stolen identity that made Hulk Hogan millions. Say nah, but I don't know what this video about, but we about to find out though. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you're notified when I drop another banger. Make sure y'all smash that like button for your boy because it helps me get into the algorithm. We about to get to the video. Shout out to WrestleLore, and let's get it, man. We ain't doing no more talking. Let's get it.
Hulk Hogan is one of the most controversial figures
when I was young, when I was little, and I used to like wear tank tops and beaters and shit, I used to try to rip my shirt off like Hulk Hogan. I thought that shit was the coolest shit in the world, but my bad. Let's continue.
The history of wrestling, both inside the ring and out. His controversies outside the ring are well documented, but in the ring there are still a few controversial actions from the Hulkster that fewer fans are aware of. Hogan was known to be difficult to work with in many ways, often changing storylines, refusing to lose, and holding down other talent, even lying to...
I ain't gonna lie, I refuse to lose too. Like, man, y'all got me fucked, especially... Now, if it makes sense, it makes sense, but like... Man, some of this shit don't make sense. Like, if it's a new guy on the roster and you pick me to lose to him, you lying to me. Hell no. Unless it's at WrestleMania or like if he becoming the next face of the company or some shit like the next face of WWE, then I don't got no problem with listening to him. Like, my time is up. It's a new era coming up and shit like that. But like, as far as like me just losing in my prime to a newcomer, fuck no, baby. I ain't doing that shit.
Vince McMahon that The Undertaker nearly broke his neck when delivering a tombstone, despite the video The Undertaker lose and holding down other talent. Even lying to Vince McMahon that The Undertaker nearly broke his neck when delivering a tombstone, despite the video evidence clearly showing that Hogan's head never touched the mat. If Vince had made an example of Taker and fired him over Hogan's claims, we would have never gotten the iconic career of the Phenom.
If you would have got Undertaker fired Hulk Hogan, I'm telling you right now, that would have been fucked up, man. Like, the Undertaker is the GOAT, man. The Undertaker the GOAT of wrestling, in my opinion. We almost got robbed of a great career because of Hulk Hogan. Look at that shit, man.
Hogan's in-ring career was certainly shrouded in controversy, but he was able to get away with it because the Hogan character had made him a superstar. It was his star power that really put the WWF on the map, and without the Hulk Hogan character, the WWE may not be where it is today. Except there was already a Hulk Hogan character, way before Hogan ever stepped foot in the ring. And this man even held the World Championship in Vince McMahon Sr.'s WWF. His name was Eldridge Wayne Coleman Jr., but most know him as Superstar Billy Graham. Wrestling fans know the name, but his peak popularity was in the 1970s, so most people don't know just how influential he was to not only a young Hulkster, but the entire world of professional wrestling. In an era where most wrestlers were pot-bellied, barrel-chested guys with very little definition, Billy Graham was a bodybuilder first, and even trained and became close friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger at the original Gold's Gym. Billy looked...
Hold the fuck on. What did he just say?
Close friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger at...
Beg your pardon? I beg your pardon?
Arnold Schwarzenegger? That's what he just said? Is that his name for real? I gotta look this shit up. Why the fuck is a helicopter flying over my head at 12 a.m.? Nothing is in the sky that important. Why are y'all up there for? My bad. My bad for the interruption. I ain't cutting none of this out. This shit raw. I'm gonna give it to y'all raw. Pause.
The original Gold's Gym. Billy looked like he was chiseled out of stone, and this immediately separated him from other wrestlers. Having trained in the legendary Hart family dungeon, Billy Graham quickly began seeing success in Calgary before traveling the world and building a name for himself. He was a pioneer in shaping the world of wrestling that we know today, both in his physical appearance and as a character. While most wrestlers back then would portray themselves as simply tough guys, Billy would be flamboyant, speak in rhymes, and wear tie-dyed shirts to separate him from the locker room. This was a recipe for success, and this influenced many of the greats that we know today, including Dusty Rhodes, Jesse Ventura, Ric Flair, Rick Rude, Macho Man, and perhaps none more than the Hulkster himself. There were obvious similarities by appearance alone, the balding but long golden hair to the bodybuilder physique, but many of Hogan's trademark catchphrases and mannerisms also came from Billy Graham. Billy, being a man of religion, was the guy to bring the word brother into wrestling vernacular, often using it in his promos and interviews much in the same way that Hogan would later do. During the Superstar's entrance, he would tear his shirt off before hitting a double bicep.
Bro, I thought Hulk Hogan made that. So Hulk wasn't the first one to do that? That's crazy. I thought he was definitely the first one.
Pose, which is looking pretty familiar so far, but it gets worse. He'd often put his hand up to his ear to elicit a crowd reaction. He'd also refer to his arms as 24-inch pythons. He'd even wear a feather boa from time to time. Billy Graham was Hulk Hogan before Hogan could even dream of Hulkamania. The only difference? Billy Graham was the bad guy. Superstar Billy Graham may have been the most charismatic guy on the card, but always played the heel, and this would ultimately be the downfall of the original Superstar. On April 30th, 1977, Graham would defeat the legendary Bruno Sammartino for the WWF Championship. During this reign, he would feud with Dusty Rhodes in the matches that Dusty's son Cody would later refer to as the unfinished story. Today, where most fans tend to gravitate towards the heels, this was not the case in the late 70s. Fans really bought into the legitimacy of pro wrestling, and for the most part, fans hated the heel wrestlers. Except for Billy Graham. Billy was finding himself gaining huge popularity with the audience despite being the cheating, arrogant, cowardly villain. Toward the end of his title run, he could feel the audience shifting and were beginning to cheer him heavily. Turning babyface while holding the title seemed all too perfect. However, Vince McMahon Sr. didn't see it this way. He wanted Billy to remain heel, and he wanted his lead babyface to be a white meat, all-American hero. So in February of 1978, Billy
So Vince McMahon Sr. ran the company before Vince McMahon? I didn't know that.
Dropped the title to Bob Backlund. Now this doesn't seem like a big deal by today's standards. To Billy Graham, this was absolutely devastating. He felt a babyface run with the championship would have propelled him to absolute superstardom. But Vince Sr. disagreed, and the dream of being a true superstar, in Billy Graham's mind, ended that night. He would soon leave the promotion and unfortunately turned to heavy drug abuse. According to his wife, Billy would spend most of 1979 and 1980 in a drug-induced coma, living on the Skid Row of Phoenix, Arizona, known as Van Buren Street. At this exact moment in time, Hogan would begin working for Vince McMahon Sr. McMahon would don Hogan with the now iconic name, and within a few years, Hogan was now gaining traction with a very similar character to Billy Graham, but now as a babyface that Billy believed would have propelled him to superstardom. And Billy was right. In 1982, Billy would attempt to return to the now WWF, but in a bizarre move, wouldn't return as the superstar we once knew him as. Instead, black karate pants. Having lost a lot of that chiseled definition due to drug abuse and lack of training, he now held the appearance of a somewhat frail old man and possessed almost none of the charisma that had gotten him to where he once was.
Damn, Billy.
He would later admit that the character was meant to be an FU to McMahon for holding him back, but ultimately this did him no favors and he would leave the company again only 8 months later. By 1985, Vince McMahon Jr. had taken over the company and had just held the very first WrestleMania to huge success, and Hogan, had become a bona fide phenomenon. Just months after WrestleMania 1, Billy would reprise the superstar gimmick in Jim Crockett Promotions, and while his work during this time was still quite good, it wouldn't come anywhere near the level that he once had, nor the stardom of Hogan. During his last run as the superstar, he would, however, give Hogan one last gift in the dyed mustache and goatee combination that Hogan would later make famous. As Hogan's stardom and bank account continued to soar to unprecedented heights, Billy would become more and more bitter, going completely broke and falling into a deep depression. He suffered life-threatening medical scares while his wife worked to support him, and he would become so desperate that he would later go on trial, claiming that Vince McMahon and the WWF had pressured him to use steroids in the now infamous steroid trial of the 1990s. We would come to find out that Billy Graham had been taking steroids for at least a decade before ever working for Vince Sr. This obviously caused some tension between Billy Graham and the WWF and its new leader, Vince McMahon, and we would see very little of Billy Graham for several years. Now, to be fair to Hogan, despite how you may feel about him, it can't be denied that he brought his own charisma and talent to the character and made it his own. And in the world of wrestling, it's difficult to find an original character when everyone is borrowing from the guy before him. This is normal. No idea is 100% original. Every great idea comes from dozens of other people's great ideas. But regardless, it can't be understated just how much Hogan took from Billy Graham to propel him to the next level. A few mannerisms here and there is one thing, but the essence of the Hogan character came from Billy Graham. Graham would later bury the hatchet and reconnect with the world of wrestling in the early 2000s, but by then, his taste of superstardom was now a distant memory, and Hogan had become a bona fide cultural icon who had taken the ideas of Billy Graham and made them famous.
Damn, Billy Graham. I mean, Hulk Hogan was paying homage. Well, he wasn't really paying. I mean, you could say he was paying homage, but he just took it and added his little style to it, added a little, you know what I'm saying, flair to it. But we about to get out of here, man. If y'all enjoyed that reaction video, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when I drop another banger. Make sure y'all smash that like button for your boy because it helps me get into the algorithm. And yeah, man, let me know what other WWE videos y'all want me to react to because I got y'all, man. But we about to get out of here.